Welcome to Talking Grit, a Detroit Lions podcast. Talking Grit is brought to you by the Monroe County Reporters, Monroe's top news source for police, fire, and community events.
Post 3, Depot Street. Truck boy every bus.
Follow them on Facebook, and for $2.99 a month, you can become a subscriber and get the news you crave even faster.
Welcome to Talking Grit. I'm Jason Harwood, and of course, Jacob Litton is here too on this Victory Monday. Lions topped the Vikings 31-29. It was a great win. It was a great battle. It was just a fun game to watch overall. Jacob, give me a word or a phrase to describe this game.
Oh, that's tough. All right. Well, if I'm going to use one word, I'm going to use the word that Dan Campbell used. I'm going to say resilient.
All right. I think that's a good word. Mine was exhausting because, man, I was exhausted after this game. It was quite the game. So just like we do every time in these biting recaps, we're going to start with just at the beginning some overall thoughts about the game before we get into our individual offensive and defense's performance. So the first thing that, we talked about it before and talked about it in the interview with Arif Hassan was we needed to weather the storm at the beginning because the Vikings always just come out and seem to put a bunch of points on and then play from ahead. And boy, did they weather that storm and come right back. Dan Campbell said in his post-game press conference, the word composure come up. And it definitely showed it. We were down 10-0, and we had gotten smacked in the mouth. The Lions got smacked in the mouth, and then, we come down and score and get right back into the game. So we took their best punch at the beginning, and then we came right back to it. I was very happy about that because when you and I were texting, Jacob, we were like, this is not starting out the way we wanted it to start out.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the first drive, we know what we're trying to do, right? We want to drive, we want to put points on the board, and then that resulted in us with the fake punt on fourth down. It didn't look like a very good play call. I don't know if that was just dead set that was what was going to happen, or if that was a look that they were looking for and they thought they had a chance, but we don't get the fourth down attempt, so then they start the ball in our own territory, and they quickly turn that into 7 points. So, about as bad of a start as you could have right there. Well, how did you feel about the fake punt? I mean, hindsight, obviously, you don't like it, but...
No, I didn't like it to begin with. 4th and 7, and we already talked about we don't want this team to start out hot.
Right,
exactly. It felt like we were playing right into their hands. Dan Campbell, they were asked him about that in the press conference today on Monday, asked him about it, and he said, we had the look that we wanted. We just didn't execute. He said it should have happened. They could have checked out of that call, but, the Lions are not afraid to go for it. Although I just thought the risk was too great for the reward on that one. We were just pinned down too far on that. That's my opinion. I mean,
right. That's what I was wondering, though, because obviously we want to go put points on the board first, but I just, didn't know if that's what it was, if it was just a certain look that we got, or if that was just the play call no matter what. So,
yeah, it looks like that was the look. I mean, they will work with their coaching. They'd work with their scout team. That's what, they had a play set up for that. I didn't like the pre-snap motion that they had. Just because it almost gives it away right there that, hey, be red alert that this is going to be a fake or something weird's coming, because you never see that motion like on a regular punt. So I think that just kind of gives it away right there, because it was going to be an option play.
Right. I do think, obviously we didn't punt at all last game, so we haven't been punting very often, but I do think we use motion during regular punts sometimes.
Yeah, I guess we don't punt enough for me to know, I guess.
Yeah, right.
But
I'd have to look into it more.
As soon as that guy went in motion, I was like, oh no. I mean, sometimes our gunners will go in motion on the side. They'll either go out wider or come inside. but not in the backfield like that. Another thought that I had in this game was Dan Campbell's initial press conference when we hired him, talked about, it's where the name of this series biting recaps comes from, the biting kneecaps. And I felt that this game personified that. We took their 10-0 punch. We came up, we bit their kneecap off. We came down, we scored. And then we were up by 11, right? And then they got that fumble from Montgomery, end up taking the lead. That was the second kneecap on the way up. And then we come down and score on them again and win that game. I just felt like this is what the type of team that Dan Campbell wants. And it was perfect.
Definitely. I mean, we answered every time that we needed to. We stayed in it. We stayed calm. We knew our shot was coming. Even, like you said, when they returned that fumble, I mean, we have the lead at the end of the game right there, and we are hoping to sustain a long drive, take some clock off, maybe put points on the board and just end it. And, they get that quick fumble return for a touchdown, and we come right back out there, and it's still just business as usual. Like they didn't skip a beat. I don't think the play calling was any different. The urgency even. I think it was Greg Olson who was the announcer, who was kind of like dogging about, the way they were calling the plays and the way they were letting the clock roll and everything like that, and how we weren't in field goal territory yet or whatever. And I think that's just the way the team is. I mean, that's the way we do things. We trust our offense, we trust our guys, and we're not gonna change up those play calls like that. It's just business as usual.
Yeah, when we get into the offensive breakdown, my next point in this overall thought was I thought the clock management at the end of the half and the end of the game were about as perfect as you could imagine.
Mm-hmm.
It just played perfectly into what we wanted to do. And I'll get into that further as far as my breakdown, because the point that Olson made about, they should get into field goal range first, then run out the clock. But I thought that was huge the way we broke down the half at the end of the half, and then also the same thing at the end of the game, trying to give the other team as little amount of time as possible, but yet leave enough time that we can not feel rushed and score. And I just felt like we go back to that word composure. I thought we had both composure at both the end of the half and the end of the game. Never felt rushed, never felt hurried. They just took care of business and trusted that, hey, we're going to get down there. And I think all that playoff, that we're in the playoffs, all that high pressure situation, winning the division last year, has just made this core of this team realize we're going to get this done. We just need to, execute.
Right. Trust the process.
Mm-hmm. Another thing I thought for sure that we missed Zeitler a lot in this game. I think we would have ran the ball even better had we had a Zeitler in there. Awashika started off rough, 2 holding penalties back to back in the first drive, end up having to go, 3 and out. He had, other false start penalties. So he was one of the lower PFF graded individuals on the line. So I was kind of disappointed in his performance, but we end up getting it done. And I would have really loved to have Zeitler in there just to see what the difference in the game would have been.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, special teams. Well, we got to start out with Jake Bates. He's had a pressure pack kick before at the end of the Rams game, but this was, this is it for the win. If he doesn't make that, we lose. So it was great to see him make that 44-yarder. It really looked pretty good. I mean, it wasn't directly down the middle, but it wasn't, it looked better than his extra
wasn't
points.
A close call. Yeah, right.
Extra points. I was sitting with my wife watching the game, and I was like, watch this extra point, and he kicks it, and he kicks it in the same exact spot almost every time. It's to the right of the crossbar, and
it's like slicing up through.
Yeah, and it looks like it's good, but I don't know for sure until I look down and see the refs if they, call it good, because it's so close. But I was so happy that this extra point or this game-winning field goal wasn't even it was no question it was going through.
Were you nervous at all when he came out there?
I mean, I would have been nervous no matter what. I think there was a little bit of extra nervousness because if we don't get him to questions about should we have gotten a experienced kicker come up, and then you have to go through all that stuff. I hope that puts that to bed. He's been really good. He's been consistent. His kickoffs have been really well. I'm happy with Jake Bates. He's been better than I expected him to be, frankly. I thought there'd be some easy misses this far as some growing pains, but he's been good. And this just is another, cements his status as this is the Lions kicker for the season.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was a little nervous too. And, it's funny. I had those same things running through my head where obviously it's a big moment, biggest moment thus far for him. Loudest crowd while he's trying to kick, I'm sure that he's ever had. It's an away game. This is as crucial as it gets. And you're right. Then you have that whole, if he misses, even with how good he's been, if he misses this kick, we're going to have to answer all these questions. Do they bring in another kicker right away? It's a mess that we don't need. So that was huge for him to go ahead and nail that one, get his little celebration in there at the end. That was funny too.
Yep.
But no, it was perfect. I mean, he's doing everything that we asked him to do.
Yep. Jack Fox had a good game too. Flipped the field a couple times. We had, like we said, we had to actually use him this game, like the last game where we didn't punt versus the Cowboys. So, Jack Fox is a nice weapon to have on our sidelines. Especially when we're playing complementary football, as Dan Campbell likes to play. The defense has played better this year, and so Jack Fox is turning into quite the weapon because we don't have to play as dangerous and go for it in crazy situations. We can punt it and just have faith that our defense is going to provide a stop. And they did at the end of this game. We went 3 and out. Yeah, we went 3 and out. Jack Fox kicked it, flipped the field. And then Vikings go 3 and out, and then we get the ball back and on that game-winning drive. It just takes all 3 phases, and I thought all 3 phases showed up in this game, and they needed to be. The Vikings were a good team, 5-0. It's a division battle where Lions are now number 1 in the NFC North, and the NFC as a whole. So that's a good place to be. It was a great game. Great game.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's, no punt was bigger than that one there at the end where, we knew times right now we need to start driving, and instead we go 3 and out, leave a bunch of time on the clock, and then Jack Fox punts, and they have to start with the ball. I think their own 20.
Yeah,
flipped it around from our 20 to their 20, basically. It was a huge fun.
Yep. Let's move on to the defense here. I'll let you start out. What was your thoughts on defense as a whole? What do you want to start out with?
Well, I have to start off by just once again saying how amazing Brian Branch is and just how well he's been playing and how much of a difference maker he is when he's out there. His pass coverage, being able to move him around everywhere, blitzing, helping out in the run game, breaking up passes, the awesome interception that he had. He's just everywhere. And I mean, now, especially with Aiden down, I think that Brian Branch is our best defender, and that's somebody that, we have to rely on. And he definitely answered the bell this time.
He did. All pro season so far. I mean, I don't think there's any question about it.
No.
That interception, was just a nice play. I mean, just great. Again, he anticipates where the quarterback's going to go. That interception is kind of interesting because the whole time Sam Darnold's like, Aaron Jones comes out of the backfield and he's wide open for a first down. And he's looking at him the whole way. And then he changes his direction, goes over towards Addison. And Branch just jumps the route and he makes an amazing catch. I mean, for a wide receiver, that's a good catch. He's fully stretched out. It was an impressive play. And I don't know if you noticed, but on the 2-point conversion, the failed 2-point conversion the Vikings had, Branch jumped up and blocked that too. When we were talking this offseason about moving Brian Branch back to safety, there's questions like he's such a good nickel corner. Why are you going to take him out of something that he's really good? These plays that he's made especially the last 2 weeks, where he has more free range because he is a safety. The interception in the end zone, when he comes back off CeeDee Lamb and gets at this interception, the 2-point conversion. Those are just 3 examples of game-changing plays he's allowed to play because he's a safety and he's not tied to one man. He could kind of use his instincts, and he has unreal instincts, just amazing football instincts.
Definitely. Just, another great game from him. Like you said, all pro season, definitely.
Yep. Yeah, he's on his way. We didn't have Aiden, and I've noticed the lack of pressure right away. I think it tells us two things. One, something's gonna have to be done just in a pressure package or, just scheme wise. But two, it also shows to me, it shows how good our secondary has become much better than last year. Darnold had a ton of time, and Darnold's been able to rip up some other teams this year, and he still could not find open people in this game. And so, we kept Justin Jefferson under 100 yards receiving. Last year, he torched us for like almost 200 in both games. So,
Right.
big difference. Big difference.
Yeah, and that deep touchdown catch, I mean, Amik Robertson was right on him. He only had a half step. It was a great throw. It was a great diving catch by him.
Yep.
Outside of that, that's a great point. I mean, because it is frustrating when you see him drop back. We're only rushing 4, and then he's got all day. And he did, sometimes when the pressure was too hot, he was able to take off and, rip off a couple of huge chunk runs. But, you're right. For the most part, we weren't letting up downfield. That resulted in a couple illegal contact or holding or things like that. But I mean, we've already said that's who we are. We're not going to change. Aaron Glenn said we're not changing the way we play defense. We're going to be tight. We're playing coverage right on them. If that means we get a illegal contact and they get 5 yards, so be it. We're not going to let them run and rip off a 20, 30-yard gain because we let them loose.
Yeah, I think we only let up 2 first play penalty calls, so that's actually an improvement for us. If you look at the PFF grades on the defense, four of our top 5 are linebackers because I thought the linebackers played really well. When you get down to number 7, Terrion's in there. Terrion's bumped his play up, and we've noticed that outside of the initial play where he overruns and Aaron Jones comes to his side, that was the only time that I noticed that, he's not getting called for PI. He's not getting called for a defensive hold or anything like that. And he's not getting ripped deep. So, we're seeing a progression already from Terrion. And now the next step is making plays on the ball and intercepting some passes and getting some knockdown passes. The last 2 weeks, especially seeing, the reduction in penalties after the bye week. And now we're just going to see this progression. So that's what I'm hoping to see from Terrion. It's what I expect to see from Terrion. So it's good. So he doesn't have to keep having the questions about up to the first round draft pick status and all that garbage that goes along with that.
Right. As the game slows down for him more, he knows where he's supposed to be. He's always had the ability to play coverage. It was, just those holding calls, the pass interference calls, and everything like that. So very good. I mean, I know last week they said it was Terrion's best game that he had against the Cowboys, and I think, he's played up to that level or even better this time.
Yep.
Just to touch on the linebacker thing, because I know you just mentioned that, I was very impressed by how the linebackers played. I know we did end up giving up, a decent amount of rush yards, but I think Sam Darnold had like 39 yards. Aaron Jones had 35 on that one run. I think that was over half of the amount of rush yards that they had. The linebackers were playing very well, and that's Nowaski. Jack Campbell actually looked very good out there, and so did Rodrigo. So very encouraging that the linebacker play was very good, and I think that kind of made up for the fact that the defensive line play was, in my opinion, I don't think the defensive line play was very good at all, and that's what I was worried about coming into this game.
I agree. AG blitzed more in this game than he had all season, like 57.1% of snaps they were blitzing on. But even with that, we were not. Yeah, because we had to, but we weren't even getting pressure with the blitzes. We were not getting home, and that just tells you how good the coverage was because we were one-on-one on the back end, and we were still able to, contain and win the game. We'll at the end of this, just so everybody, we'll talk if we're going to have to trade someone because of the Hutch injury. We'll talk about that at the end. We're going to table that conversation, but yeah, we will get to it in this podcast because I think after seeing this game, those questions are just going to persist. And even Dan Campbell in his press conference today, they asked him about that, and he said he expects more from the defensive line. And we'll see. I mean, the Vikings tackles are very good. Their interior is not as good, so that kind of disappointment that Aleem didn't get home more.
Right.
And so I expected the tackles to play well. We got, they're both top 10 tackles on that they have. It's a good offensive line. Is just especially as much as the house we were bringing with the linebackers and everything, we just couldn't get home. Missing Derek Barnes in that situation for sure.
Absolutely. And I mean, that was something else that I talked about, though, as far as defensive line outside of pass rush, is just the contain. And our team's going to be using those outside runs against us more. What are they going to do? And that was the first running play of the game, was an outside run. He had a read zone in the middle. He busted to the outside. Our defensive end, I don't know what side it was on because I did not watch the film. Whoever was in crashed in. Brian Branch actually met in the hole. He was there to make that play had he went up the hole. Instead, he comes outside. That's where Terrion's contain supposed to be and Terrion's in the middle of the field. And it was just a foot race, and they made it way too easy. But that's the kind of thing I think teams are looking at that, and they probably already are planning that just because they know our speed on the edge is pretty much gone now. So they're going to be trying those outside runs more.
I mean, our corners usually get right up and run defense. So I like our edge rush defense. We just overcommitted to the inside. And Aaron Jones has just had a really good season. Saturday, when I saw the tweet from Adam Schefter that Aaron Jones is going to play, I was like, oh, darn it. And I was hoping we were going to miss him for this game. And it probably would have made a big difference because I don't think anybody else scores on that play that's in their backfield. But it is what it is. It's, as far as a measuring stick, I'm glad that we were able to hold up against Aaron Jones and, their offense was intact, as a whole.
Outside of that one play, I mean, they had a couple, like you said, they had a couple up the middle runs, which, Aleem and DJ Reader did play majority of the snaps in this game. Mm-hmm. And, they were able to be effective running up the middle to a certain degree. Obviously, we have a really good run defense. I already talked about the linebackers played really well, but, we don't want to give up more than 100 yards rushing a game. They had 139 in this game.
Yeah. I mean, the stats across the board, if you look at the stats, it's like a mirror image of each other.
Right. Yeah, it's crazy.
It is like crazy. I don't know if I've ever seen anything this close. I mean, time of possession, we had 29. They had 30. We had 57, so almost 31. We ran almost the same amount of plays, 56 to 52. We had a 391 yards. They had 383 yards. Obviously the score was close, 31-29. I mean, both Goff and Sam Darnold complete 22 passes. We just did it in 25. They did it in 27. The passing yards are just 3 yards apart. The rushing yards were just 5 yards apart. We had 144 to their 139. We each had a turnover. Both are 4 for 10 on third down. So it's like when you go down there, it's the same exact stats. I mean, they got that, return that for a touchdown, which, we could argue that we almost had the same exact thing when Branch returned that one. That replay showed how close that play was. And
right.
For as long as they looked at it, I don't understand how they overturned that because I couldn't see anything conclusive about that, and they let it run. Branch would have been, defensive player of the week 2 weeks in a row had he got that because he would have had an interception, fumble recovery, touchdown.
It was a heck of a return by him too to score that.
Yeah. Yep. And they never blew the whistle, so it was alive the whole time. But I mean, I like that we're punching the ball out there, even on the sidelines. I mean, I think some players just let up because they're near the sidelines, and with last week we had to punch out right on the sideline again too.
Yeah, definitely. The first replay that I saw, I thought, okay, yeah, for sure, he's out. Still a nice play, he's out. And then the second one, when they showed, his heel's kind of up in the air, he's not all the way down yet. And then, how long they looked at it, I was like, maybe there's a chance here.
Yeah, because they showed that first replay before the commercial break. And so the whole commercial break, I'm just thinking in my head, I'm hoping that a different angle shows something different and we're going to come back. And then they did. They go, it's a lot closer on the second look. And I was like, oh, man, if we could get this touchdown, that's going to be huge.
If only.
Yeah, but it just didn't happen. I wanted it for the Lions as much as I wanted it for Brian Branch, just because I was repping his jersey yesterday. I had my Branch jersey on, so he was doing me proud by the game he was having.
Yeah.
The only thing I want to add on the defense is that we let Sam Darnold run right up the gut too much. And so far this year, we've been able to crunch the pocket, so you keep in the rushing lanes, we're able to just condense the pocket. We weren't able to do that, and our inside rushers were getting to the outside, and they're just leaving it wide open. And you letting Sam Darnold run for 39 yards on you. That's not happy about that. But again, first game without Aiden. Everybody's figuring it out, and AG will come up with a good plan for next week. I have faith in that. Just like defense, I'm going to let you start off, Jacob. Talk to us about the offense. Where do you want to start with this?
Well, I think you have to start off with Jahmyr Gibbs, right? I mean, this was his coming out party. You said in the last podcast that you were surprised he didn't have that he didn't break one off for a touchdown yet. And then he didn't make us wait too long before he busted that one out. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, I think that his increased usage was at the expense of David Montgomery. He went down with that injury. He did come back, but you could tell he just wasn't the same. He's still banged up. He was still feeling that the whole time. So then they had to, they still kept going back and forth, but now Jahmyr Gibbs had the more attempts, and he turned that 15 attempts to 116 yards, 2 touchdowns. He was electric. We always knew what he was capable of, and he just got to showcase that a little more today against this, top run defense before.
I expected more from Gibbs in this game than Montgomery just because of how the Vikings play rush defense. And there was just going to be some holes every once in a while, and Gibbs is able to just exploit those and get to the next level quicker than Montgomery can. Well, they play so many people on the line with the Vikings, and then sometimes they'll back out, but sometimes they'll just stay in there. And if they're handing off to Montgomery, Montgomery can break tackles, but, when they have 6 people on the line, it's hard for him to, get to the second level, whereas Gibbs can go to the outside a little bit, or just his speed was a better weapon than Montgomery's in this game. What didn't surprise me, what happened with him having more yards. I'm sure the injury factored into it, but, it's great when we can go to our backup running back, and it's Jahmyr Gibbs, who's, a Pro Bowl running back. The first touchdown run was awesome. So I'm watching the game upstairs with my wife. My boys are watching it downstairs. We're both streaming. They're like 5 seconds ahead of me or something. They're like basically almost one play ahead of me. Maybe not even though that. And I could hear them cheering. So I'm like, oh, something's good's going to happen. And then I hear ankles. That's what they're, these kids, that's what they say. They, when someone breaks their ankles, that's what they scream out. And that's exactly what happened. I mean, just Jahmyr gave him the shoulder juke, and that safety bit so hard. And then, Jahmyr just ran, and then the cornerback or the safety on the other side had an angle on Jahmyr, but Jameson ran right with him, and so he was going to take him out of the play, and so that was easy coasting for the last 5 yards for Jahmyr. But that was an awesome run, his longest of his career, especially for the touchdown. That was great, because that was the first touchdown, so that was like, all right, we're back into this. This is you're not gonna just wipe this game away from us. We're here. We're the Lions, and it was great to see.
Yeah, that was definitely, that drive, we needed some sort of points. Even a field goal, we needed to put something on the board because of how the game was going. And then, one play, we get the touchdown back. You can always count on Janewell being downfield throwing blocks too.
We mentioned Jahmyr. We got to mention the other guy, JG Goff, playing lights out, playing probably best quarterback in the NFL right now, the last 3 weeks. Just, I mean, I don't know how much you could play better than him. Living up to that contract. He had a rating of 140, only 140 in this game, only 140, which is
only.
He was in the plus 150s the last.
That's low for him.
Yeah, just it's rough. It's what we got to deal with here in Detroit. Just an awesome 3-game stretch. I think they said that the Lions have had more touchdowns than incompletions in the last 3 weeks or something like that. Which,
I saw that too. Yes, unbelievable.
You could say, well, he's doing a lot of checkdowns or whatever. No, he's making money throws. He's making tough throws, especially that, the game-winning drive, that throw to Amon-Ra.
Right. Yes.
Just, you knew it was going to Amon-Ra. Everybody in the stadium had to know that was going to Amon-Ra, and yet he still stands open and just, Amon-Ra, he had two defenders taking a hit and he held onto the ball. So that was a clutch throw and a clutch catch.
Really the whole game, we talked about this before, but that's what the Vikings like to do. They come up to the line, they're showing certain pressure, and they're making the quarterback try to read. And a lot of their defense is guessing games. You don't know who's coming, you don't know who's dropping, you don't know where they're at. And, Jared Goff, he's so smart. And he's just such a good quarterback, so good at executing. He read it very well. And if you go back and look at most of these plays when he's making these checkdowns and he's changing these plays at the line, that touchdown that he threw to Amon-Ra, that he came down on the line, he called the defense out, he's making the checkdowns, he knows what he's doing before the play even snapped. He knows what they're showing them, and he knows what he wants to do. And they had a zero blitz on him, and he stood in the pocket and he knew. And there were just many instances like that, and I think that was a difference in why we won this game, is how well he was able to read the defense and make those throws.
Well, I just think it goes back to composure, right? I mean, none of this game was too big for Jared Goff. He even said it. He goes, they were giving him a lot of checkdowns, so that's it. He's going to take it. But you're checking down to David Montgomery, who also made an awesome one-handed catch, turned that into like a first down. That was a great catch. And then, you're checking out to Jahmyr Gibbs, who's got amazing speed. It's okay to do those checkdowns because they're going to get a lot of yak and get a lot of yards after catch and get first downs. And so that's what makes this offense so dangerous. JMO didn't do anything in this game because the defense was not going to let him get over the top. That's why the Amon-Ra going deep, not people don't expect Amon-Ra to go deep like that, have that, streak route. They weren't expecting that. Jared Goff, you couldn't throw it any better. It was right in stride, touchdown.
Right.
It's just Jared Goff is playing amazing football. For the people that signed contracts this offseason, he is definitely the one that's lived up to the billing so far, in my opinion.
And he, once again, didn't even have an incomplete pass until, the second half. And that first incompletion was one. They batted down. He had Laporta.
I know. Yeah, it's crazy. Eric Schlitt posted a fun stat on Twitter this morning. So since Brian Flores has taken over the coordinator for the Vikings last year, defensive coordinator for the Vikings, spent 23 games. As a team, they've only given up 30 points 4 times. 3 of them are to the Lions, and they played them 3 times.
Right.
I think the Lions are uniquely set up to beat Brian Flores just because of the weapons we have and the smart offensive and excellent offensive line that we have. We're able to call out and get good protection, and you have a quarterback like Goff that just knows where to go with the ball and could throw it there accurately and not get rattled. Because it's got to be intimidating when you see 6 people on the line and you don't know where they're coming from, and you got to make all those decisions. We talked about in the pregame or the preview podcast, Jared Goff said he's got to make a million decisions before the snap and right after the snap, just based on where the defense is showing up. So, way to go, Goff. I'm just so happy he's our quarterback. Just some of the best consistent quarterback play I've seen from a Lions quarterback ever in my life.
Right. And he had a couple of times where, the defender was going for like the strip sack, trying to swat the ball away. And it, when you're watching it live, you're like, oh, get rid of it, do something. You just see it happening. And, they missed the strip sack. I think he did end up fumbling once, but 2 of them they missed, and he was able to get the throw off on one. I think he still got sacked the other. Yeah, but that's another, when he starts feeling the pressure, you start feeling the heat. Sometimes they kind of throw up a bad pass, and he hasn't been doing that.
No, the thing that he's changing his game this year is just he's willing to run, number one. That's something he's changed this year. And also just I've noticed his movement in his pocket has been a lot better. He moves just enough to get out of pressure and to be able to make the throw. And I think part of that is just confidence of where his players are going to be, and he just knows where he needs to get. But that part of his game has excelled this year. Just the pressure avoidance and just moving slightly in the pocket to avoid, the strip sack or, the turnover or whatever. He's able to do that. And, one thing that I remembered him doing a lot last year was throwing at a screen would be busted and he would just throw it at the feet of the running back, which I'm okay with, better than forcing a play. But I don't see that much this year. So either they are calling better plays or Goff is just moving around enough to, get his guy open.
I don't feel like we'd have to look at the stats here, but I don't feel like they've been throwing very many screen passes. I don't think that's come up very much because the pass protection and really the run game has been so effective. You haven't really had to do it as much.
They had a really good Laporta had a very good screen. I think that was in the
Was it the week
game.
one?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was a Rams game. He had a really good screen, but yet they don't run. I mean, a lot of them are checkdowns, and so they'll have, Montgomery or Gibbs to the flats, which I wouldn't call screen passes at all. I just think that this offensive line is
screen.
Yeah. Sometimes I think this offensive line is so good that if people know they're getting a free rush, if like the defenders know they're getting a free rush, they know something's up because they, like, oh yeah, screen's coming because I shouldn't have got by Penei Sewell that quickly.
Right. You just mentioned Penei Sewell, I mean, had a heck of a game as he always does. But I think it might have been on that Amon-Ra touchdown I was already talking about when he kind of blocked two guys and allowed Goff to have that time to throw. Because like I said, it was a zero blitz. They were sending everyone. There was nobody deep covering except for the safety coming. Sewell's awesome.
Yeah, I think Justin Rogers asked him about that. He's like, "Do you know that's coming?" And Penei goes, he goes, "It's all instincts." He said, but his main goal is to protect Jared Goff. So if he's on someone and there's a guy that's going to beat him there, he peels off and blocks that guy. And that's he did that last week too. And just peeled off and blocked, a free runner and just enough for Goff to get the pass out. Cause sometimes it doesn't take like a full on block, just give Goff
a hand on him.
Yeah. You just need to like chip him or, just enough to slow him down a little bit so Goff has time to throw it. It's great. A great observation. So drive before halftime. Vikings don't have any timeouts. Lions want to score. That's the ultimate thing in there, but we also don't want to give the Vikings a lot of time left. So they, I'm going to start out with the pass. They pass down Laporta, get down to around the 12. And then the clock gets running. They basically go down the 2-minute warning at that point. So we're 1st and 10 at the 12. Then we have 2 runs by Gibbs. We get down. I think we're at like the 9 at this point. It's 3rd and 7. We got the clock all the way down to 26 seconds. So we're basically, it's going to be us scoring a field goal if we miss this, or, if we get the touchdown, which we eventually do. And if you like play breakdowns, if you like to look at that kind of stuff, this was one of my favorite plays of the game, this 3rd and 7 touchdown run from Jahmyr Gibbs. I broke it down on YouTube. Check out our YouTube channel, Talking Grit, and it's one of my favorite plays to break down. So if you want an in-depth look at this one specific play, go there and check it out. But it was awesome. And I don't know how we keep surprising teams on 3rd and 7 or longer and running the ball, but I love it. And you got to keep the defense honest. From play review, it is obvious that the Vikings were playing pass the whole way. Harrison Smith doesn't even know that it's a run until Gibbs runs into him in the end zone. It is Harrison has his eyes on Amon-Ra the whole time and doesn't even know that it's a run. Penei Sewell, who you mentioned earlier, no one's on top of him. They have 6 on the line. Olsen said it looked like an all-out blitz. Well, they back out those guys. They only rushed 4, but no one was on top of Sewell. So Sewell got to the second level, and Awashika actually made a really nice block to clear the lane. And I mean, Gibbs didn't touch anybody till he got into the end zone practically. So it was, and at that point, they had like 17 seconds or something left on the clock for the Vikings. They end up, not getting anything. And so we scored a touchdown right before half, which was, exactly what you wanted to do.
Right. And, that is 3rd and 7. Technically, you would consider that a passing down. We're at the 8-yard line. It's hard scoring in the red zone when they have pass defense like that. And that's what they were trying to do. They're trying to defend so that there was going to be no touchdown. They're trying to hold us to a field goal. We surprise them with a Gibbs run. And like you said, it was perfectly executed, perfectly blocked. I mean, it was awesome.
Yeah,
and if you're calling the plays and you're Ben Johnson, if that doesn't go that way and you do get stopped, it was 3rd and 7. So I mean, there's potential. We could have got a first down inside the 1, and we had another timeout left.
Yep.
I was 100% okay with that play call. That was great.
Yeah, and it totally caught him off guard. And one thing I will shout out is we talked about JMO's blocking earlier. He actually got a chip block on Van Ginkel, so Van Ginkel could have came because he was unblocked. He could have came right down the line. Van Ginkel was playing end, and JMO got just enough of him that Gibbs could just get through the hole. And it was a whole team effort. And then when we talk about why these runs are so explosive, the wide receivers play a huge role. Tim Patrick on the 45-yard touchdown run by Gibbs had an awesome block that sprung that. And, talk about a guy that's fitting in. Tim Patrick is exactly what we were missing in training camp. The whole time that we're talking about, we need one of these guys, these big receivers to step up. Well, he was on the Denver Broncos roster the whole time. And then he came to Detroit and he's meshed well with everybody. He's doing what we want. And he talks very highly about this room, this wide receiver room. Everyone is selfless and gives up their body and blocks on every play. And I'm so glad that we end up getting Patrick on this team. I expect we're going to be using him a lot more as the season goes on. His big body's going to come in useful for some first downs. He's already had a couple nice big plays, but he's shown up every game blocking. I could tell you that.
Was that him or JMO that hit that block when Khalif scored? Because on Khalif's touchdown, Gilmore kind of fell down. Then Khalif just comes across the field. It was almost too easy.
That was Gibbs.
Oh, it was Gibbs. Okay.
Gibbs comes out. You talk about when Khalif goes around the corner.
Well, yeah, because he came across the middle, caught it, and then there was only the safety. I think it was Metellus they had to throw the block on.
Yeah, so Gibbs basically just gets in the way because technically the defender's backs to him, so you can't block him. But Gibbs just stands there so that when he turns around, because Khalif's so fast, he just needed to get around the corner.
He just needs that angle. Yeah.
You just need to put your body in the way. That's kind of what you're not allowed to block in flag football. So that's what we kind of tell our kids, just get in their way, just stand there and get in someone's way. And that's exactly what Gibbs did. That was a great play. So getting back to running the clock, the game-winning drive, Olsen is saying, do they know that they're losing? Well, yes, they know what they're doing. They're going to run out the clock. I think the problem is that some people rush way down there, get down there. Teams will get down into field goal position and then can't run enough clock off. The Lions were so confident in their team that, hey, this is going to be the drive. They knew what they needed to do. As Olsen's telling us why, what Dan Campbell's doing is wrong, we get into field goal range and we still had a minute, over a minute left to go. And just, I'm not saying Olsen's wrong, but Dan Campbell knows his team, so I'm not going to question his expertise in this at all. So.
Were you surprised when we decided? So we've got the ball on their 22-yard line, over a minute left. Were you surprised when we decided to kneel the ball out at that point?
Yeah, I was kind of surprised. But again, it's a risk reward thing. The Vikings are just going to be trying to punch that ball out.
Right.
If we're dragging and crawling for 5 yards, is that going to make it? Bates has got the leg, so it's not a matter of that. And honestly, he's probably just as accurate at 44 as he is at 34. The previous play before they kneeled it, Gibbs ran to the outside, and that's all they were doing was trying to get the ball
he didn't
out
get anywhere.
Gibbs. And I think at that point they decided this is not worth it. And I could see the argument either way, but if he runs it and they fumble it, then you're just like, why even?
Then you don't even get that chance, right?
Don't even get that chance. So, I
typically we don't do that. So it was just interesting to me to see them kneel like that. But I mean, based on how the game had went, we had that fumble touchdown before, and we're already in field goal range. You're right. Let's give ourselves a chance. Let's not try to get too cute with it.
Gibbs was just amazing on that last drive. He had 2 good runs, and then they had the check down pass. The only thing that we could have ran the whole clock out. Gibbs runs out of bounds at that one point instead of diving after getting first down or just kneel down. That's the only thing I would nitpick that we could have did any different, because then they would have just had 0 time. But I did a good job to get the clock all the way down. And then, Goff, we talked about it earlier. Goff to Amon-Ra is just money in those last drives, fourth quarter drives. He's, it's money down. He's going to give it to his main guy, and Amon-Ra just came down with it.
Amon-Ra with another great game too.
Yes. Yeah. And you talked about it in your great guarantee. You were waffling between the rushing yards and, Amon-Ra having a good game, and you could have went with both, man. I should have stole one of yours because I didn't get mine.
Right. It looked like we might get yours too.
It was
when he picked up Darnold. It's like, oh, we just need one more.
I know. Got it earlier. I was like, we're halfway there. So Olsen brought up something interesting. He thought that the Lions on the kickoff were going to kick it short to waste more time, and then promptly kicked it out. There was no way I wanted to give them a chance to return that thing.
No.
We saw it last week with Dallas, right? Right before the half, they got all the way down, got into field goal range on that kick. If you do that, if you give them the option to return it, they probably had a trick play or some sort of gadget that they were going to try to run on us. And
I don't think it's worth that to use those couple extra seconds, because if they are using more time, that's probably because they were working the ball further down the field and potentially breaking one open. Yeah, I was talking to JJ about that. So just, we're going to kick it out the back of the end zone. There's no chance. Greg Olsen was wrong a lot this game.
He was, especially in that last little bit. I like Greg Olsen, to be honest with you. I think
I do too.
Color commentator, but it's hard when you know his team as well as we do, and they don't get to see these teams week in, week out. Like, we get to see the Lions every week and know what they're capable of, and know what's normal for them. Dan Campbell is like this perfect conglomeration of guts and analytics. Like, he just, I don't know, he marries the two very well, and usually can read his team very well. Like you said, Olsen was wrong in this game, but I still like him overall, and I don't think that Tom Brady needed to supplant him necessarily.
Right, no. I think Olsen's better than Brady. We'll see once Brady gets used to it a little more, but we got to talk about how the game ended, though, too. Because, they had so they get the ball, 15 seconds. They don't have any timeouts left, so we know it's a tall task, but not unobtainable. So we had to crack down on defense. They get a 20-yard pass. They're running up there. It's one of those things, it really looks like that they weren't going to have time. It's in the middle of the field, so there's no way they're going to get this ball off. And they don't get set, but then they do spike the ball, and, the flag comes out. Surely that's got to be a 10-second runoff. Surely it's the end of the game. And, you can see the camera, the broadcast was showing Campbell and Goff, and they're talking. And then, they kind of start to celebrate a little bit. And then you can breathe that sigh of relief, like, okay, yeah, no, we're good. And then they come out and say, well, it's an illegal formation, but the ball was spiked. So there is no 10-second runoff. There's a 5-yard penalty. How does that make sense at all? And if this has always been the rule, why does anyone get in formation? Run the center and the quarterback up there and let everyone else stand wherever and snap the ball. Especially then, because maybe somebody will be offsides too, and then it's offsetting. I don't understand that.
It's stupid. And so Justin Rogers posted in an article today that this is apparently not the first time this come up. It came up like in a Rams game before. But you're right. As long as you don't move, all you need is someone to snap the ball to someone. It doesn't even have to be the quarterback. It could be, should have snapped it to Justin Jefferson, the fastest guy in the team. They could have just snapped it to him and spiked it. As long as no one is moving behind the line, then it's dumb. And that specific rule needs to be changed, because you could exploit that to, like you said, that you could get, if you run up there really quick and just spike it with two people and the defense is not on sides, then you could have a situation where it's offsetting penalties. And then, at that point, you
just get another play anyway without the 5-yard loss.
Right. And so it was so dumb. So the ruling, so just in case, you're walking, you're listening to this podcast and we're talking about, being set. Basically, if they would have spiked it and it had been a false start, someone would have moved. that would have been a 10-second runoff because it wasn't a legal snap. But because it was a legal snap because everyone was set, even if they weren't set correctly, they were set, then that counts as a legal snap. There's a dead ball and they were spike it. There's 1 second on the clock or whatever. They'll get one more play again from 5 yards back. But it just doesn't make sense because of course you would run up there and just do an illegal snap. So you could exploit the rules and it shouldn't be that way. There should be the 10-second runoff. I don't get it. It's not the intent of the rule, I can tell you that.
Right. And I think there needs to be some sort of rule in place as far as how many seconds need to be left for the ref to spot the ball. Because that's something that keeps coming up too, is where you have some games where, there might be 4 seconds left. Well, it takes that ref the entire 4 seconds to get that ball, place it where he wants the ball, and get out of the way and give you the okay to snap.
Right.
And then there's times like this where it's like it took him 2 seconds. Like the ref came and touched the ball and then ran out of the way. He didn't really even set it. So it's like, how does that make sense? There needs to be some sort of set, where if there's not at least, maybe you make it 5 seconds. If there's not at least 5 seconds to set the ball, then you don't have time to run another play unless you have a timeout. In the NBA, if you don't have at least, I think it's 0.3 of a second. If you don't have 0.3, you cannot shoot the ball. It's got to be a tip.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so, as soon as they made that catch, I was like, "There's no way they're getting up to that line and doing it."
Right.
And so then they got up there, and I was like, "Oh my god, it's getting really close." And then they spike it, and then as soon as the reaction that you mentioned with Goff and Campbell taking off their headset, I thought the game was over. That's when I started yelling because I was like, it was a big win, and I was super excited. I started yelling, just being really happy, and then then it's like, oh no, this is going to be another Lion rule that we find out in the Lions game. And I didn't have SOL thoughts. I didn't think that we were going to lose it. But in my head, I was like, this is something that I know that I'd have been scared about in the past because this would have bit us in the butt, the whole, whatever. You can go down through the litany of things that have happened to the Lions. So I was also really glad that they just blitzed Sam Darnold and sacked him. They didn't even get throw the ball up. It was just over right then. And I like that because the initial play when we ran before that, we only rushed one guy. Like when they were at the 30, we only rushed one guy and everybody was back. And I was like, I don't know if I like this. But
I didn't either because their kicker is really good and he can kick it from deep too. So, I mean, if they made it further than that, they could have just tried a Justin Tucker 67-yarder on us or something. So
I know indoor stadium too. You don't have to worry about the weather or whatever. But
yeah, I mean, 3+ years ago, if that happens to us, I'm going to place a bet on that Hail Mary landing just because that's the kind of things that used to happen to us.
Yes,
this year was different, and that was Trevor Nowaski, good job sacking Darnold, didn't even let it happen.
I read something in one of the articles I read today that AG told Anzalone that they always do that and they've gotten a sack each time. And so I think you're right. That's just the play, put pressure on the quarterback. Maybe it's different if it's at like the 30 or something like that, where you don't have to Hail Mary it. Maybe it's different. I'm not sure. But from that far back, you got to have 4 or 5 seconds for them to get set up. And I don't want to Hail Mary back there with Justin Jefferson because, he's made some crazy catches in his career, and I don't want to give him the shot of pulling down an amazing one. So I was glad to see him blitz.
For sure.
We don't need to get really too deep into this, Hutch, but I just want my quick question to you is, do you think the Lions make a move before the trade deadline for someone?
Do I think they do, or do I want them to? Because I've already answered we had differing opinions about that before, but before this game thought, yes, we need to make a move. We need to do it now.
Yeah.
And then I think that's only, it's weird because, this was a huge win, but we did that kind of in spite of the defensive line play. It wasn't, that everyone stepped up and we had a good showing. We did it in spite of that. And obviously, this is against one of the better teams that we have. I just don't know how you wouldn't make a move. I know we don't exactly. I don't like the idea of having to trade multiple first-round picks. I'm okay with like a first, second, and third spread out over the next couple of years, but if if you trade 2 first-round picks and that gets you Max Crosby, I think that you have to do it. The window is now. We have the team right now. We're missing that piece, especially if you get Max Crosby or somebody that's already locked under contract, because then you have them with Hutchinson next year too, which is insane. And if you think about it, I mean, based on how the season's going now, based on how the team we have, that first round pick is going to be towards the end of the first round. Brad Holmes, we've been very good in drafts. So if that's all you have is a second, maybe you have a second, third round pick this year. Next year, you only have your first. You give them the second and third next year. Maybe you trade around and do whatever you can value wise, but there's no hole on the team right now that we need to look towards a draft. The only positive about keeping those draft picks is getting those players, hoping you hit on them, and then hoping that we have those contracts for the next few years. Because that's what you want. You want to hit on the draft picks and you want to get those lower contracts so you don't have to have them count against the cap as much. But, I mean, with where we are right now, how are you not calling Vegas? And if they're not asking for 3 firsts, or if they're not asking for something obscene like that, you got to pull the trigger. And I think it's more likely, that's what I'm wanting. I think it's more likely that we go with a lesser. I know Zadarius Smith's name's been come up a few times. Landry, I think. There's other guys out there that are not going to cost you as much. I think that's probably the route that we're going to take.
I agree. Zadarius Smith is probably, that's the odds-on favorite, I would think, for coming to Detroit. Max Crosby, who's my heart wants, although, I think that you're going to be giving up signing one of our draft picks with just because of the cap situation. We're going to have to re-sign Branch in a couple of years. Kirby's going to be coming up. Laporta, Gibbs, all those guys. At some point, you want those high draft picks to just kind of replace some of that talent.
Right.
Cap keeps going up, so they could do crazy things with this cap. So Brad Holmes could make it happen. You get Max in here, and we're already the number one NFC. The Super Bowl odds would increase dramatically from where they stand right now if we got Max in here. And like you said, then we'd have Max next year with Aiden, and you already re-signed a league, and you have DJ Reader. That is, if that isn't the top defensive line in the league, I don't know what
right.
would be. That would just be unreal. So yeah, I don't know. It's a little bit of mortgaging the future for unknown. What's going to happen in the future to get Max a known quantity? Usually, I want known things over unknown things. But with Brad Holmes, his draft picks turned to gold, and so my joke that I've made is that we only give up 1 first-round pick for Max, but Brad Holmes has to make the pick for the Raiders, and so therefore it's going to turn into an All-Pro. So it makes it worth it. That'd be the only caveat that we would have, that they get the intel from Brad on who they should pick. But my bet is they're going to make a move. I don't think it's going to be a huge splash. I don't think we're going to get Myles Garrett or Max Crosby in here. I mean, Myles Garrett is probably going to be floated out there just because, Deshaun Watson got hurt, and we'll see how that situation with the Browns. I think the Browns might be willing to would trade, but they're going to want a king's ransom for someone like Myles Garrett for sure. Josh Hines-Allen from Jaguars, maybe, maybe out there too. I'm sure there's other players that will come open, especially as teams get out of the playoff hunt. More things might be opened up, closer to the deadline, which is I think November 6th. So it's coming up a couple weeks away.
And you see, they were talking to Max Crosby though, and he kind of let slip. He was like, "Wherever I'm going to be, I'm here to win."
Yeah.
However he worded that was basically like, it's not guaranteed that that's where he's going to be.
Yeah, well, before it was like I'm a Raider for life, and so when he said that opened the door to that he's thinking about going to somewhere else. And Max obviously has Michigan ties, going to Eastern Michigan. He had said in a previous interview on a podcast if he could play for any other team, he'd want to play for the Lions.
Right.
And so if Max came here, the hype around this team would be, it's already high. It would be off the charts if Max comes here.
Right. That's the ultimate. I think Max would be ultimate number 1, Myles Garrett number 2. Although Myles Garrett has a lower cap hit, lower contract right now, I believe, too. So they've got that going for them. But you're right. I think Cleveland, with how bad they butchered the Deshaun Watson thing, they really need draft picks. So they're going to try to get anything they can if they're giving him up.
Yep. It's just hard. You would, in any rebuilding, you'd want to have Myles Garrett there. But then you come into the window, is he going to be too old by the time, that they've reloaded with their draft picks? So, all right. Well, I think we need to wrap up, hit our great guarantees. We talked about them earlier. You said the Lions would rush for over 125 yards. They were over 140, so you hit that.
Nailed it.
I wanted 2 interceptions. Very close. Amik Robertson almost had one and late, but Branch got one, so I just had one. But I'll take it. We won, and it's all good. So huge win for the Lions. So excited. Would you, if you had to rate wins, what is compared to a regular season win in the last couple of years, would this rate on, your scale of regular season wins?
Ooh, that's tough because, it's a huge win, but it's also earlier in the season.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, it's weird because that Packers win at the end of the year was really huge and felt like a really good win for us, but it was also, we already knew the playoffs were over. So
yeah,
I don't have a very good answer for that. What about you?
I think it's a Kansas City game just for
week 1.
The week 1 last year, opening the season, it just reaffirmed that the Lions are real. And I felt like the same thing here, that I don't think anyone was discounting the Lions so much, but I had heard, rumblings that like, oh, the Vikings are going to be kings of the North and, they're undefeated. But, they ran into the Lions. It was a huge win. We're a division win on the road. It was awesome and it was great. It was just reaffirming for where we're at, and the way we won that game and the way we played it. I was very just proud of the team as whole, and our defense is for real. It's too bad that Aiden's out, but we have played really good defense in every game except for the Seahawks game, and Brian Branch was out in that game.
Exactly, and that's what we said is that was the difference maker in that, is that Branch was gone.
And so I really think our secondary is much better, certainly way better than it was last year, and it's going to get better as Terrion improves. I know CD graded low in PFF this week, but I'm happy with his coverage. It's sticky, so you
absolutely
just tight windows, man. Just tight windows, and we're just going to have to live with some of these illegal contact penalties. It's just the way it is,
and we're okay with that.
Yep. So, all right, man. Huge win. Super excited about, I get to go to this game on Sunday. I'm excited, go back, see them play the Titans. It's a weird place to be because it looks like, I think we're in double digits spread on this game versus the Titans. So it'll be, it's a neat place to be as a Lions fan. So anything else that you want to hit on before we head out of here?
No, I'm good. Just want to point out that you actually, one more thing is that I am going to beat you this week in fantasy football. Thanks to Jahmyr Gibbs.
Yeah, I know. I kind of forgot you had him, and I'm cheering for all of them. And then I look at my fantasies. I'm like, how does he have so many points? Oh, Jahmyr Gibbs had 33 points in the first half. Cool.
Yeah.
All right. I'll take it, man. Real football trumps fantasy football all the time for me.
100% of the
time. So I'm never going to be rooting against. I mean, would I have wanted Montgomery to do better because you didn't have him on your team? Yeah, maybe I've been okay with that, but I'll take it. Lions win is paramount. So with that, we're going to take off and say, go Lions.